Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and happy release day for Resident Evil 9. So I decided to do a very important topic for release day, and that is, of course, our favorite Resident Evil characters. I thought it was weird that I hadn't done this, but it was the same thing with the monsters. You guys haven't seen that yet because I probably haven't uploaded it, but don't worry about that. Today we're talking our favorite characters in Resident Evil. And I was gonna save this for after 9 because I was like, well, it's possible that, Grace could end up somewhere and I might even gain a greater appreciation for Alyssa, getting a bit more context out of her character. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? The point of this is to celebrate the 30 years that we've already had. And I'm gonna do a whole discussion video where I'm just like, I love this, or I don't love this and this from RE9. So that's gonna happen. I don't know if that's really gonna happen on Monday, because admittedly, I took Monday off work, so because I'm playing the whole weekend. So that's how that's gonna go. So something will come up on Monday. Now that I think about it, I have no idea what was gonna be on the Monday episode, but something will be there on Monday. But for now, on release day, we're talking favorite characters. And of course, I'm gonna start with Jill Valentine. It's very simple. Jill Valentine, the first lady of Resident Evil. I love the character. She has some of my favorite costumes in the franchise. Admittedly, it's kind of just her first costume and her second costume. Those are my favorites. I think she has some other good ones, of course. Not Revelations. I think that one's okay. I don't mind that one. But the DLC from 5, I like that. I for some reason, I thought it was really different. Just the simple, like having her have a cap on. It was like, it's a very simple difference, but it's like the only other costume where she wears any sort of hat, and obviously it's different from the beret. The beret is sick, of course, but it's the only other costume where she has a hat on. Like, that's not really, like none of the characters really have like mechanics outside of Leon, really. I mean, if Claire was in more games, I guess she'd have the mechanic of like, hey, that's the character that wears the vest, because they did that for 2, and of course they did it for Code Veronica. And then she didn't really have anything until Revelations 2 came out, and that's when they transitioned to the leather jacket, which I was fine with. I've mentioned that before, like that being her transition, like in adult mode, we'll put it, where it's like, okay, she keeps like her leathers and stuff like that, but it's just a full-on leather jacket, which is why I hate the fact that they did that in the remake. I was like, no, the full jacket is supposed to be like adult Claire and then like biker Claire, because she's a biker. Why didn't you keep the vest? But anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about. As far as like Jill's costumes and stuff, she's always had, some of my favorites, really just her first 2 appearances, and they stand the test of time as far as I'm concerned. But I've always loved the character. I wish we got more. I mean, honestly, you're probably gonna hear that quite a bit, because most of the characters in Resident Evil, I was gonna say most of the characters I like, but we can just talk Resident Evil in general. Most characters, we just don't have enough of. I mean, that's kind of been the whole issue with like poster boy Leon situation. Like, Jill was the face. I mean, honestly, she was the first lady, and then obviously the 3rd game came out, it was her game. And it was like, hey, Jill came back. And so she was the face of the franchise for a long time. And then once 4 hit, it was like, well, hold on now. Oh, he did a suplex. Let's switch this up a little bit. And now we have a new, Leon's like the new it guy. Especially, and I've mentioned this before as well, they made him that. They could have done anything else, and like things could have been more balanced, even outside of the games. They could have done anything to keep all the other characters around and have us, well, not us, but I say more for newcomers, have people gain more of an appreciation for the cast of Resident Evil. And instead they were like, you know what we're gonna do? Every CG movie is Leon. That's what they went with. Every CG movie is Leon, and other people sometimes. So it's not like nobody shows up, but most of the time it's like, hey, Leon's here, and also the other people. And that's just how it is most of the time. I think there's probably only been like, 2 movies that ever started with different characters. Like, if Leon happened to be in it, there's only like 2 other movies that ever started. That was also a rock that just hit my effing car. That's insane. But there's only like 2 other movies that ever started with anybody else, and I think one was Death Island, because it started with Jill, because they were like, hey, Jill's coming back, even though she looks like she does in the RE3 remake. Still pissed off, like, they couldn't even give her a different effing shirt for that. Ridiculous. But that movie, and I think, I always forget the names of the later ones. I always remember like the earlier movies, and I remember like Infinite Darkness, but I can never remember the one where Chris and Rebecca were in it. And I think that movie also starts with Chris doing a mission. I feel like that movie starts almost exactly the same as Death Island, where Chris goes into a house and fights some zombies, and I think that's exactly how Death Island starts, except it's just Jill, and it was like, yeah, I'm not gonna listen to orders, and then she goes in and does something. But I think those movies almost start the same. It's been a minute, of course, but I'm like, I feel like that's how that movie with Chris started too. But anyway, love me some Jill. wish she got more representation. Of course, you're gonna hear that a lot because, like I said, that's just how it is with the franchise at this point. But Jill Valentine is definitely my number one character. And, that just comes from, well, it doesn't just come from, obviously the first game, because if that were the case, then Chris would be like my number two character, and he's not. If I'm going in order, my number two favorite character would be Claire. And I don't know if that's just because I always really liked her outfits too. I don't know if it's like more of a costume situation or what the deal is, but Claire was always like my number two. Like I always like playing as Claire more than playing as Leon. Even in OG2, I was like, well, Claire I don't like her outfit is just cooler. Like she just looks cooler. So it just always felt way better playing as her. And I'm like, Leon's cool. He's got like a lot of blue. Blue's my favorite color. So, it works for Jill. It's all right for Leon. Not that they really put him in blue that much anyway. Like I was happy to see, like from trailers and stuff in 9, his undershirt is blue. And they did that, in RE4 as well. I feel like they did it more in the remake. I think in the original, it was kind of hard to tell if it was like a blue undershirt or anything, but I think in the remake you could kind of see like, oh no, it's like a really dark blue, and I feel like they made it a slightly lighter shade of blue, his shirt in RE9, and I'll see, of course, when I actually play the game, how that really turns out, but I was appreciative of that because I was like, okay, I like when they put the hints of colors of the characters. Like I kind of hated the fact that in RE8, Chris is showing up all that in time, and I was like, there's not a hint of green in this. They're like, I don't expect him to wear a full, a olive green turtleneck or anything, because that I think will look a little weird. Like that fits a lot better in all black. But there could have been something. There could have been a design on the shirt or anything to just give him like a little bit of green somewhere on the outfit, like camo pants, something. And he was just like, they're like, jet black. I was like, you guys could have thrown something. Like, give me something, please. So I wish they did that for Chris, because I feel like that's another thing that kind of waxes and wanes throughout the franchise, where they're like, yeah, this character has this kind of color scheme. And it's like, well, do we want to keep that? And same with Leon once again, RE6, his undershirt, if I'm not mistaken, was blue. Like once he actually was like towards the end of the game and he lost the jacket, it was like the same thing again, where like the undershirt is where they keep all the blue in. And I was like, okay, I can appreciate that it's at least still there. But once again, going back to actual favorite characters, Claire Redfield. I just really like Claire. 3 is my favorite game in the franchise, so it's not a favorite game situation, because I know that's that can also be a big thing. And that's also not why Jill is my favorite character. It's just the fact that I think she was the first and third, person in a sense, because obviously there's like 4 playable characters when you go between 1 and 2. Well, heck, not even counting the side characters, there's more than 4 playable characters. But Jill was always my favorite because it was like, go through the first game a million times, and then Claire comes up and it was like, well, she just looks really cool. Like, she's just cool to play as. Admittedly, if we're going unlockables and stuff, way better unlockables. Her extra costume is sick. I wish they put that in the remake, like the denim with the flames. I love that costume. And also, she gets the single action army. She's out there like Revolver Ocelot. Super cool. Like, I absolutely love that gun. So that's really fun too. But I didn't have any of that when I was a kid because I didn't know any of that existed. I was just playing the game a million times over. And it's like, well, I like her more than I like him. Maybe it was a crush. I don't know. There could be some, extreme bias based on, well, sorry, I don't find you cute. But hey, Leon, I don't think Leon has to worry about me not finding him cute. I think he's fine. I think he's got a fan base, especially based on, the conversations around 9. So, sure, Leon's fine. But Claire was always my favorite. And, once again, we go with representation. It really sucks to be a Claire fan because, like, if Chris was always touted as much as Leon is, it would be the same thing where it's like, man, I wish we could see Jill more. Like, it would bother me more. And Chris is in it, but he was like, barely at the end of 7, and then he got a DLC, and it's like, okay, that's not a ton. And then he shows up in bits and pieces in 8, and it's like, okay, that's, he's still like a side, character, and then you get to play him like at the very end of the game. But he didn't like go over the top. It wasn't like, hey, it's Chris all over the place, even though Chris has been in a lot of stuff as well. But it's not nearly the same thing. Like I said, you go into like the CG stuff, and obviously you have to watch the movies for this to be an issue, because for people that just play the games, they probably are just like, all right, well, RE4 is just super popular, and so that's why I see Leon the most, because, advertisements will typically go with Leon. But interesting representation, or lack thereof, when it comes to Claire, and then it's just hit harder because of the fact that Leon is like the face of the franchise at this point, and it's just like, dang, Claire was like right there, Also with Sherry possibly being in this, I'm pretty sure that was Sherry, but with her being in the game, man, I need Claire. I need Claire to show up. They put adult Sherry in on 2 occasions. I'm gonna need Claire to show up. I'm gonna be really upset. And honestly, I think I'm just gonna really be upset. I don't really expect anything, but I'm like, man, I would love it if Claire showed up. Second favorite character in the whole franchise. I would love to see some Claire representation. At least a reference. Like at this point, I'm like, you know, a pence, please. That's like 1 cent in euros. For anyone that doesn't know that, 1 pence. But it's like, please. So hopefully we get something with Claire, because I need more Claire in my life. Recently played Revelations 2, you know, just been obviously just playing through the games and just to get footage and stuff. That game is really good. That game is really fun, especially because I'd beaten the game, so I went through, thank God for internet saves, because that was like 2 computers ago. I was like, dang, I'm gonna have to start over. Loaded that bad boy up, it had all my info. I was like, yes. And I started off with like a couple extra guns. I was like, this is nice. This is fun to just kind of get back into it and just jump around and shoot some things. That was really nice. But I really love that game. Like I played through like the first episode. It's in the underrated episode. Check it out. It's actually like a super long one, which I was not expecting. But check out that episode. Revelations 2 is underrated. But moving on from Claire, as far as favorite characters, number 3 favorite character is Chris Redfield, the first boy, the first man of Resident Evil. I like Chris. I've always enjoyed Chris as a character. I like all, you know, pretty much every character in Resident Evil. I tend not to have a problem with outside of some of the like one-off characters that they tend to do. Specifically, honestly, the only time where I could say like, man, I just kind of didn't like characters was Revelations 1. And it was like the jokey guys. I wasn't the biggest fan of like Jessica. Like they just put her in there like, let's make her hot and then kill her real quick. And it's like, okay, like if you could like, I don't know. It's like, I at least do something with it. But it was just like, all right, you got the jokey guys that I don't really like. And then the other characters that are like kind of mysterious and, you know, obviously Resident Evil issues abound. They haven't followed up on those people. So they're doing something out in the world, but they're not that important to come back to. So, you know, there's that. But I think Revelations was the only time where I was like, yeah, I just don't really like these characters. And then, like I said, it was just the side characters that were there. I like, was it Clive? Was the guy that was working with Jill initially in the game, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was cool, but other than that, it was just like, okay, all right. Some of these other characters I'm not too fond of, but other than that, I tend to be fine. I like Steve. I think he's okay. You know, he's got his issues, don't get me wrong, but you know, he dived through a window with 2 gold guns. Like, I can't hate the guy. I can't hate the guy. I can not like the voice, but we can talk about that later. But Chris Redfield, I like him. I like Chris. I think he's a cool character. Obviously, he's gotten to, you know, boulder punching levels. He's just the buff dude. But I like Chris. I've always enjoyed Chris. I think I'm more prone to, you know, if we're going like slender Chris, or, you know, like where he was like slim fit, or, you know, more like martial artist style where he's like slim, but still, I mean, heck, he was fighting Wesker. If you know, watch Code Veronica X, and Wesker is laying on, like, he should be dead. But he gets up, he takes like the ultimate uppercut, and I'm like, okay, like it takes way more than muscle to survive that, really. But I'm like, all right, you know, like that's cool. Like he's doing some crazy stuff. He's going out to find his sister just like she went out to find him. That's another reason. They are both kind of cool. If I'm being totally honest, like Jill did go through like the whole city by herself. You know, like them being in the mansion is one thing, but something about actually running across the city does kind of elevate you a little bit in terms of characters and running from Nemesis and stuff. So there are some story elements that do impact who becomes my favorite characters. And I could definitely say like, and that's where, you know, and once again, check out that underrated episode. The other game in there is Code Veronica. That was the one where I was like, dude, that intro of Claire running through a facility, helicopters like shooting out the windows and stuff. That was like the coolest intro to any Resident Evil game. I think it's still probably the coolest intro to any Resident Evil game. I don't think there's another one that has ever topped that in terms of just being like, that's like the coolest thing ever. It's not scary or creepy or anything like that, but in terms of just being the introduction to the game, you're hyped because you're like, whoa, she just went through, at 19 years old, I can tell you, I wasn't running through a facility, dodging bullets from a helicopter and dropping guns and then catching it at the last second to shoot a container behind a group of dudes. Like that, I wasn't pulling any of that crap off. And then here's Claire just running and gunning, left, survived an outbreak in the city, took off, went to find her brother, found some facility that she somehow broke into and all this other stuff. Like, I don't know what Chris was teaching her, but like clearly he taught her enough. Because I'm just like, you don't just pull this stuff off. Like she's like sneaking and this and that. Like this is crazy. But it was super effing cool. So, you know, they kind of elevated Claire, and then here comes Chris, you know, halfway through the game, he's climbing up the side of an effing mountain, which, you know, I mean, even to this day, I find mountain climbing very impressive, especially when you're doing free climb and he's just like, I'm just out here climbing. I'm like, that's not normal. You don't just do that. That's cool. So like, Code Veronica has a huge impact on like how much I like those characters because they were both pretty badass in that game. Like all things considered, they were like insanely hardcore. Like they were doing some ridiculous stuff. Like we always talk about like, man, things got really crazy when like 6 went off the rails and stuff, but that was crazy. She ran from a helicopter shooting bullets at her, and they were also killing their own people. They were just like, we need to kill her and kill anybody in the way. But yeah, that game I think really was like the elevation. Like I already liked her more than Leon because, like I said, I think that was more of a costume thing where I'm like, I just like how she looks. Like she just looks cool to me. You know, like the biker in the vest and the shorts and stuff is like, you don't, especially because, you know, obviously the OG version, she had like the red shorts and like, you just like, you don't see that ever. Like that's just like super rare, even in terms of like, oh yeah, you see like short shorts on bikers and stuff, but you don't see like the matching red shorts with the red vest. It's like, that's rare. Like you, like that doesn't come in very often. And it was definitely something where I was like, okay, Code Veronica once again, elevation, both those characters. So Chris Redfield, the first man of Resident Evil, definitely a cool character. I do miss his older costumes. His Code Veronica costume is actually my favorite one that he's ever had. But I don't mind the RE5 outfit. Once again, that was like one game, and then they kind of had their slight variations on it. I think in whatever the first CG movie was that he showed up in, they had like a variation of his 5 outfit. Like it wasn't the same, but it was like clearly that became like the new sort of costume for him. And obviously they've transitioned from that too. Like once they went to specifically 8, like in 7 I was like, okay, he's like in combat gear, but in 8 they were like, no, he's just in a pea coat. Like looks cool, like I said, jet black and everything, but it was definitely like, oh okay, like they, you know, like I don't know what his like scheme is or anything at this point. Like they ditched all the green. I was just like, okay, like I understand he couldn't have the same outfit, but once again, like a hint of green would have been real cool. Like just something in there. Granted, in Code Veronica, when I was playing that back in the day, I also thought his outfit was all black, but that looked super sick to me. Like I thought his outfit was like all black in that game, and I could barely tell back in the day. Like, oh no, he's got a lot of green. Like you gotta, I feel like for a lot of the old costumes, just because of the times that we were in, you know, system-wise and technology-wise, sometimes if you don't have like the perfect color setting, you're just like, oh no, that's just black, right? It's like, no, he was wearing green the whole effing time. His pants are even green in that game. I didn't realize that. So it's just one of those things. I was like, this game is kind of dark, and I just thought he was in black most of the time. Like I barely even registered that there was like quite a bit of green. Like it's really just the black vest. But I thought him and Wesker were almost dressed exactly the same in that game, which I thought was kind of a thing, you know, back in the day, like, oh, they're kind of dressed exactly the same, but it's like the two sides of the coin or whatever. It wasn't. It was just a dark game. You know, not that that's gone away. You know, I know that's been a current thing where it's like, man, this game's effing dark. RE2 remake, my God, that game is dark. I remember getting footage for that over the past couple weeks. That was kind of intense. I was like, I feel like I can barely see, and I'm like in the dark. And like, it wasn't like a scary thing. It was just like, yeah, I just can't see. Like if you have a light on, like there can be no reflections. Like it was really weird. I was like, this game's way darker than I remember. But that's just how they did RE2, because I think even the 3 remake, they brightened it up a bit. So, and I was fine with that. I was like, the 2 was just a little bit too dark. Like it was something about like, it can be dark with no lights, but then it's just like dark and dark. You know, like it just didn't work. But shout out to Chris Redfield. Definitely love that dude. I think he's great. I don't mind where his character is currently, and I'm hoping once again, I don't expect this at all, even though it should have happened a while ago. It should honestly be the thing, but if they save it for 10, I'll be fine. If they do the BSAA storyline that follows off of 8, where it's like, yo, why are they using BOWs? I'll be totally fine with that. That game better have Jill and Chris, because you cannot do that storyline and then only have Chris, and then Jill's just like nowhere to be found, or like she's referenced and it's like, oh, she's doing something else. It's like, no, she's not. I think there's 11 founders of like the BSAA. Obviously, we only really care about Jill and Chris. I think the one dude that was a co-founder was the guy in Revelations 1 who ended up being like one of the bad guys or whatever. I think he's dead now. I can't really remember if he died or not, but he got busted when we found all that stuff out. But you know, they're like 2 of the co-founders, and obviously they're like the important characters that we know of when it comes to, you know, Resident Evil. But that was definitely something where I'm like, okay, you're gonna introduce this. I hope we get some really cool stuff. So I think we might get to see him come back, because, you know, that's a huge storyline. We got to see him come back. I would love to see him have like a nice outfit that's green, and Jill has a really nice outfit that's blue, and I'll be very happy with that. Once again, this is probably just copium, but we'll see what happens when it comes to RE10. But moving on to the number 4 character, which this is something that kind of jumps around all over the place. Like normally I have like my top 3 and then everybody else just kind of exists. And this one I think really just comes down to like one of those super random things. Barely in the games, not enough representation, shocker there, but I just really like the character, and maybe, there's a slight story to this, and I think it's just stayed in my head, but I think Rebecca is technically my 4th favorite character in the franchise. I have a thing for the ladies, what a surprise. But I did and I've mentioned this before, in the very first Resident Evil, I did have a crush on the live action actress that played Rebecca Chambers, so technically speaking, Rebecca Chambers was my first video game crush, and she's no joke. I mean, I was playing Resident Evil when I was like 5 years old. She may have legit been like, she might have been like right after Kimberly from Power Rangers, or it's just like, oh, check, like, hey, Pink Ranger, boom, there's Rebecca right after. Like, honestly, it might have been like the number 2 crush I've ever had in my life was the live action actress for Rebecca Chambers. And I think I've just always liked Rebecca ever since then, like the slight crush, but I've also been a huge fan, and once this goes to that cool factor of just, they either do something or I just like how they look. I always like Rebecca's costume. Very simple. I think, she has like the little thing where she like cinches the bandana on her head and then like looks towards the camera, very 90s sitcom style, where she's like, huh, and she does the smile. But I always liked that outfit. I was like, oh, bandana, that's cool. This is a 5-year-old kid, so that was like the coolest thing. I didn't know what Rambo was at the time. It was like, bandana, that's pretty sick. Like just the little hit of red at the top. I was like, that's a cool outfit. Like that's pretty sick. And then like the contrast with the white, and like she has like a tiny bit of green. And I mentioned in another episode, I love her prototype costume when they were gonna do the original version of like RE0 on N64. I love that costume. It was basically just Jill's outfit, but in white. And I'm like, but it makes a huge difference. It's like a totally different costume, but it looks absolutely amazing. But even the outfit she actually has in the original one, and then, when they actually remade it for 0 just to keep it in line, I like those costumes. I like her costume. It's simple, but something about it was just like, I just like her character. And it's, like I said, barely any representation. It's just the simple thing. Like I said, the crush, the early child crush might be a part of it, but I just always like Rebecca. And I always, that was another thing, Rebecca being the youngest, she was always the character whose age I always kept track of the most, because I was like, that, even though I was 5, she was like 18, so I was like, okay, this is the character I'm like closest in age to. So whenever I was tracking like the timeline, I'm like, dang, Rebecca's like 33. And that was, I don't even remember when that was, but I remember like keeping track of characters, because of course, once again, even back then, it was like representation of characters is kind of non-existent. Like even this was after 5, it was probably between like 5 and 6, and obviously it was before the live action movie came up, or not the CG movie, obviously. But it was definitely one of those things where it was like I was always tracking the characters and just being like, man, she hasn't shown up since she was like an 18-year-old kid, and she'd be 33 in real life now, and it's just like, this is nuts. And I just always remember that was another like random little attachment to her character, because she was like the youngest character in the franchise. And I guess at this point, I mean, obviously not counting like the newer characters, obviously Sherry would straight up be the youngest. If we're going like the adult characters, I think Claire is technically the youngest by like a year, because you're going, well, no, that would be the same year. It was a few months later. So technically, Rebecca and Claire are the same age, probably different months. Although I don't think there's a canonical time. I recently saw, once again, the game's been coming out. There's been a lot of people posting Resident Evil stuff. I recently saw a thing where someone posted like Claire's age, but it was in like a non-canon thing. It was like the only time it was ever actually referenced. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Didn't know it was like kind of a secret, I guess, like when her birthday was. But they're the closest in age, and it's just Rebecca, like I said, possible the crush is still there. Just that the early days, and then still liking the costume. And also I think back in the day, it was really interesting having her be a playable character, because when you play as Jill, you don't, I always forget if you actually play as Barry or if he just saves you, because I think there's like one part in the game where you can switch to Barry, but I think that's just me making that up in my head, because I think I'm thinking of the plant situation, and that's just you saving him or him saving you. So I don't think you ever play as anybody else when you play as Jill. You just play as her, and Barry shows up a lot. But with Chris, you actually play as Rebecca when she's getting the cure for you from Yawn, or for Yawn, I should say. And so I think that was another element where it was like, oh, you know, like, because I don't remember who I originally played as first. Probably Jill, because it was a woman, if I'm being totally honest. But after that, it was like, okay, you know, play as Chris, and you go through the game, and it's like, oh, there's this other person that literally doesn't exist. You know, if you're playing as Jill, Rebecca basically does not exist, which, you know, that leads into the whole remake situation, because it is still a little weird that they didn't think to make like an actual canon for the first game where, you know, you see everyone actually escape. But back in the day, it was like, oh, there's like another person. You know, she is the third playable character in the franchise if you're playing as Chris. So it's just an interesting situation. And I think there's like a bunch of little factors where it was just like, just the smallest little things always kind of kept her in the back of my mind, where it's like, man, I wish we could see Rebecca more. Like, what's Rebecca up to? What is she doing? And then of course, you know, the movie finally comes out and it's like, oh, she's a scientist. She's not really in the field. And then they're like, we're going to put her in the field, you know, on Death Island, which I was totally fine with, because it was cool to see that happen. But shout out to Rebecca. She just, like I said, like, we all have those things where it's like, you just like this character and it's just like, it's just there. I just like them. And I'm gonna round this out with a quick number 5. There are lots of other characters that could be number 5. There's some really good characters. Honestly, Revelations 2 made me kind of appreciate Barry a lot more again, because it had been a minute since I played that. But I'm gonna go with the villain, and I'm gonna go with Wesker. I like Wesker as a villain. I like him as a character. Whether it's the silly version where Chris is making fun of him at the end of the first game, which we love to make fun of because it's funny. It's a funny, you know, dialogue moment. But in general, I like Wesker. I know some people can have their issues. Like, let's be honest, the first retcon of the franchise was Wesker coming back to life in Code Veronica, and it was like, oh, they like straight up retconned it. And this wasn't like it's like kind of light like, no, he's effing dead. Like, you can find his body, he is dead. They straight up retconned that when Code Veronica came out, and they just changed it. That was like the first giant change in the franchise where they were straight up like, nope, we're just flat out changing it. I personally think it was for the better. I love Wesker. Honestly, my favorite Wesker, oddly enough, was during the giant retcon where they were just like, poof, he's alive. That was actually my favorite version of Wesker. I thought his outfit was the coolest. I thought he looked the coolest. Like, and I mentioned this probably in my underrated video talking about Wesker. By the time they got on the 5 where he was moving so fast, it looked like he was basically Nightcrawler or like in a puff of smoke. I was like, this isn't as cool as the Code Veronica version where it was like the after image and stuff. I thought that was way simpler. It was like, for me, I've always thought that was a better representation of speed than just like, oh, they kind of just pop and disappear. Either they instantaneously show up or you see the after image. I don't like the smoky effect because that makes it look like teleporting. I know it's supposed to look cool because he's in his jacket and it's his jacket waving around or whatever. But I'm like, he looked really cool in Code Veronica. He looks cool in the original game too. Like, once again, a very simple outfit, I should say. And it was like, all right, I always liked that, appreciated it. But he's just a good villain. He's a good character. Obviously, you know, let's be honest, I think all the voice actors have done a pretty good job for him. Definitely the dude where I think of the voice the most, where it's just like, that's just the villain dude. Like, that's just like a cool villain voice. He does very villainous things. He basically went to like kill his dad in RE5. And it's just like, okay, he's a straight up villain. He's really powerful, but he likes to toy with people. Like, I say it all the time. Every time I bring it up, Code Veronica, he kicked the crap out of Claire. I think of that. I've been thinking about that like my whole life. Like, he kicked her so hard. It was crazy. And then he just put his foot on her chest. Like, it was a very crazy moment. Like, that's a serious kick. She shouldn't have lived from that. She flew like 15 feet. Amazing moment though. I love that moment. But that's where he does some weird stuff and he's just mad. Like, and that's another thing. He's that character where it's just like, you could do other things and be okay, but for no reason. This, once again, like pseudo part of the retcon, him just not liking Chris, it was like, there was really no reason for that. Once again, there's not like a full-on canon when it comes to the first game. There's nothing that they ever did, even in the remakes, where it was like, oh, when you play as Chris, he finds out earlier or somehow stops him or goes back and forth with him. I don't know if the canon is, the laughing scene where he made fun of him, maybe that's canon and that just set him off for the rest of his life, where it's like, you laughed at me and I'm angry now. I don't know what the deal was. But when they threw that in Code Veronica where he was just suddenly super pissed at Chris, I was like, okay. I appreciated it because once again, he went a little extreme with it. Like, he would just toy with them and he would mess with Claire and be like, if you see your brother, tell him I'm looking out for him type of stuff. It's like, it was just menacing, like, just for no reason. Like, you have way more important things to do, but he'll be like, hold up. I'm gonna take a minute real quick and let me just rock you real quick. Like, bam, and just punch you straight in the face. Like, just because, let me just push you right into this thing. Because he does that in Code Veronica. I think the first time he really encounters Chris and they kind of fight, if I'm not mistaken, that basically ends with him like just doing either a push or a kick and he sends them right into like one of the chambers, and then that's when they release the hunters for the first time in the game, and it's from a cutscene where they were just effing around, and Wesker was like, I can play with you, 7 minutes, you know how it is. That's his character. Like, it's a very childish thing for him to do when he has the ability to do so much more. And that's why he effing got killed in a volcano, which is admittedly pretty cool. I kind of wish he didn't die though, because I was like, oh, that kind of sucks that, they officially killed a character. But I always like Wesker. Like, he's fun. Obviously, if we're going gameplay wise, super fun once you got, when they finally made him playable in RE4, absolutely amazing. Even more fun, like, he was already easy in the original version. Granted, Mercenaries I don't like how easy Mercenaries is in the remake. I think it's ridiculous that, I hate the fact that you can die and still get the points. I was like, ooh, I don't, even I was like, oh, I don't, like, where's the challenge? Like, it was so easy. Like, it was unfortunately easy. I was like, there is no challenge to this. Still fun to play, of course, but like a lot of people who played the original, I was just like, ooh, I was really hoping more for a challenge. If I die, I'm okay not getting the points. I should do better. I should live. But it was like, no, you just get the points anyway. I was like, ugh, that's kind of cheap. But gameplay-wise, super fun. Not in the Code Veronica extra mode, because that was difficult, because he was the character like Nikolai in 3, where it was like, hey, here's a knife and a bunch of herbs. So, that wasn't really super fun to play as. But once they put in like the melee stuff to 4, and he's just full on super melee dude in remake 4, I was like, okay, that's super fun. Like, even though he'll be dead in 5, hopefully we can just keep him around as a character when it comes to mercenary modes going forward in the future. Just keep him forever, because he's just fun to play as. But Wesker, I would say, rounds out my top 5 characters. There's a million others, and it could easily change if I'm like replaying all the games again and stuff like that. But for like the random little reasons, the top 3 is solid. It's Jill, Claire, Chris. Like that will like never change unless a new character pops up that just does something just that I couldn't possibly imagine. I don't see anybody taking the top 3 or swapping them out in any way, shape, or form. Especially considering Wesker's at 5, and he's done a million times more things than Rebecca ever has. But, he's still at number 5. I'm like, I just like Rebecca. I don't know what it is. I just like Rebecca. Maybe it's the fact that he's a villain. If he was like the anti-hero character, he'd probably be number 1. Because it's like, oh, he's like, he'd be in like that classic, Sasuke Vegeta range where he's like, oh, he's an a-hole. He's like Wolverine. He's a bit of an a-hole, but when it comes down to it, he's got a heart of gold. No, he's just an a-hole. He's just an a-hole, and he's a child. Like, you're trying to take over the planet, and then you're like, I'm gonna stop for 7 minutes and F with you. It's like, you don't have to do that. But he had his 7 minutes and he failed. That's what he gets. Boom, blown up in a volcano. Coolest way to die, if we're being honest though. 2 rockets had to take you out as you're mutating. Like, you fell in lava and didn't instantaneously go. You got to get some respect for that. I just got to be honest. But I would say those are my top 5 favorite characters. Of course, when it comes to just in general characters, love Carlos. Shout out to Billy Cohen. I love that dude. Like, representation. Like, give me some Carlos, Billy. Obviously, shout out to Sheva. I would love to see Sheva come back. That would be super cool to have her come back, especially as a character that, isn't in like Resident Evil 0. and like the further we get away from characters, the harder it is to hope that they're gonna come back. And for Billy, I'm like, I don't have much hope at all for that. But Sheva is like, that was a million years ago. But number-wise, I was only 5. 7 and 8 almost don't even count. Like, they just stuck with like one dude. And it's like, okay. So, we got time. We got time for some of these other characters. But we'll see what happens. Obviously, shout out to Ada. Honestly, every character, like I said, like I like everybody except for like the couple people in the first Revelations game. Other than that, that's really it. I kind of do like everybody else. But I would love to know your favorite characters. If you got like the full list, if you could just rank every character in Resident Evil that you know, feel free to do so in the comments. But I would love to know your favorite characters. I hope you guys are enjoying Resident Evil 9. If you made it this far, if you bothered to watch this, maybe you're downloading the game or anything like that, I hope you enjoy RE9. I am staying off the internet outside of uploading this video right now, and that is it. Like, until I get home and I play this game, I gotta stay off the internet. But would love to know your thoughts. Like I said, favorite characters. Heck, if you guys want to throw in your least favorite characters, why you just hate somebody, feel free to do that as well. But mostly, I want to know the good side of things. What makes whatever Resident Evil character your favorite character. What did they do? Is it the costume? Is it, like me with the Rebecca thing, like part of it, I do genuinely believe that crush kind of just kept her on my mind, she's just cool. So I would love to know your reasons why you have your favorite characters, what they did, whether it's the costume, your look, style, whatever. I want to know, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.